Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday night Chiefs Digest live Q&A. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, and our good friend Nick Jacobs will be in a little later. Yes, hooray, hooray. It is Q&A day. Always appreciate that, Luttrell. And Brian, always appreciate hitting that like button. Absolutely. Always appreciate that, just to hit the like button so you make sure to get notified when the Q&A does pop up at 7:07 or 7:08 or occasionally even 7 o'clock. You never know. Definitely appreciate you all coming in tonight. See, we already got a few questions coming in, and yes, happy snow day. I don't know if my neighbor with the snowblower across the street can come through on the microphone or not, but we do have that as a background noise, natural sound tonight. So cold day in Kansas City for sure. More cold than snow, luckily. I don't know how you are all doing. Sharon's in Albuquerque and it's 53 degrees. So I'm definitely missing those 80 degrees that we had in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. So definitely missing that. But hey, it is the NFL offseason, and that's what it's all about. So got to put up with a little cold to get through the NFL offseason, get to that new league year here in just a couple of weeks, get to the combine. It's what we got to go through. Spring will be here soon enough, and I'm glad you brought that up. There you go. My favorite movie, Groundhog Day. I quote it all the time, and I was even thinking about Luttrell about bringing in a Groundhog Day quote to start the Q&A tonight with the snow. So I definitely on board. I don't have too much to, I think, comment about tonight. I'm sure if there's any good rants that I have loaded up or Nick has on the tap, I'm sure that you will have the question that unlocks them. Not too much going on. Certainly, today is the day that you can start tagging players using the franchise tag or the transition tag. I know I already saw one question about that coming up, so I won't get too much into that until we get into the conversation. Few comings and goings here and there, but been quite a few days in Chiefs Kingdom. So anything that's on your mind, that's what we will discuss tonight. So fire away with your questions, bring them, and we'll talk about it all. So let's go. Chris has the first one, 617 brought it in, which was not long after I posted about tonight's Q&A. So I appreciate Chris having that bell hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, so you get notified, you get your question in first. Love it, Chris. Whether or not Kelce decides to retire, should KC make an offer to Atlanta for Kyle Pitts? This has been a popular one for a few years now about, maybe trying to get Kyle Pitts in Kansas City since Atlanta doesn't seem to know how to use him. And they seem to start getting it a little bit. I mean, he would be a wonderful safety blanket for Penix down there. Now they're going in the right direction. And they've got a club option for him. So for this year, that is, I'm trying to remember if that's the 5th-year option. I'm assuming it is. Yeah, it's got to be the 5th-year option. Because, he was 4th. Yeah, gosh, was he 4th overall? God, I can't, I'm still kind of in disbelief, as good as Kyle Pitts is and everything like that. I'm still kind of surprised that any tight end gets to go 4th overall in today's modern NFL, but Atlanta has had some moments of, making some decisions. And hey, if they had used Kyle Pitts, maybe that would have been a really, really good pick. $10.9 million essentially on the club hit on the hit for the 5th-year option for next year. I mean, you would probably want to try and rework it. So if you made a trade for Kyle Pitts, you would definitely be trying to work an extension for him to get that cap number down. And if you're the Chiefs, you'd have to believe that and assume that he is the guy for going forward, that he's the guy that could take over for Travis for at least 3 to 4 seasons afterwards. So I think you'd have to believe in that. If you're the Chiefs, you have to believe that he's would fit in. He would be able to be that guy, be able to be the alpha of that tight end room. I'm still not convinced that Atlanta will deal. I mean, I'm assuming that Atlanta still thinks that he's an important part of what they're doing. They seem, like I said, I think that with Penix, they should absolutely be making, Pitts an important part of that offense going forward to make Penix's life a whole lot easier. He seemed to have a little bit of a connection, it seemed like, with Pitts this year. So if I'm Atlanta, I wouldn't be letting him go away. But yeah, I would definitely check it out. I mean, the tough thing is, again, that the Chiefs are in mode where they're really not interested in giving up a lot of picks for players. And if they're going to be giving up picks, I think they would probably want it at a more premium position. I think they would probably be looking at a left tackle, maybe a defensive line, maybe wide receiver. So I don't know if they are really in the market for wanting to give up picks for a tight end, especially for number one draft pick, unless you're getting good value. I mean, if Atlanta wants all the world for Kyle Pitts, then no, I don't think it would happen. But I'd be interested. I mean, like I said, I mean, if you're the Chiefs, you'd have to believe that it's a long-term move and something that you would want to be able to restructure that contract to save a little bit of money this year, because you really, even fitting the $10 million in the cap for one player is going to be a little tough with the needs that they have and what they have available. So I would check into it. I don't know that it's necessarily reasonable, but I would check into it, Chris. Albert, early last season, the prevailing sentiment was to cut Toney this year and sign Trey. Why the change? I don't know that. I mean, I think it probably just depends on who you're reading and who you're talking to. I mean, there certainly have been some elements that have changed. I mean, a year ago, absolutely the Chiefs' mindset was sign Trey. I mean, he was one of the three that they wanted to try and get done. They wanted to get Trey done. They wanted to get Creed done. They wanted to get Nick Bolton done. Because, they knew what the reality of it was, that if you sign these guys early, sign them a year before you have to, before they hit free agency, it's cheaper. It's just the reality of it. Bolton and Smith, whether or not they got legitimate offers that, that they could really, truly consider, I don't really have any evidence to say that it ever got to that point, that there were legitimate offers on the table for both of those players. Obviously, they got it done with Creed. And there's some will still say, I mean, that you should sign Trey Smith. And I mean, I still think that you're going to regret not signing Trey Smith. I think that there was a sentiment for sure with, during the tail end of the season there, Albert, with the way that Toney was playing, that there was a lot of people who were thinking, okay, maybe you do need to keep Joe Toney as your emergency at left tackle. He played, better than maybe some expected coming off the injury at this age at left guard. You can just move him back now. I mean, I still think that probably the smart business move is to walk away from Joe Toney, walk away from that cap number. It's a big number. I mean, it's got $26.9 million for this year. You can save almost $17 million by walking away from Joe Toney. Yes, you're going to have $10 million in dead cap, but that's a lot better than $27 million. And with the cap hit, so I still think there's a legitimate argument to be made that yes, you're better off signing the player like Trey, keeping him in the fold, and making a difficult decision to walk on from Joe Toney. I think there's probably a little bit less sentiment now of the you have to keep Toney mindset that developed over the last few weeks of the regular season and during the playoff run. I think that, now that you probably have conventional wisdom setting in that Joe Toney is not a true long-term solution at left tackle, certainly not at his age. A lot of issues there. I mean, you need to find a left tackle somewhere else. So then it comes down to, is he your left guard of the future? You got a lot of cheaper options at left guard, and I'm not saying that they're going to be all pro, but then again, Joe Toney may not be all pro much longer either. He's hitting the end of his career. I mean, this is definitely going to be the back stretch. Some scouts are going to say that he showed a little bit of signs of step back this year. I still look like a pretty good player to me, and obviously the Chiefs have always been in the philosophy, because it's an Andy Reid philosophy he brought from Philadelphia, which is that you just don't pay players, even guys like Joe Toney, deep into their 30s, and that's where Joe Toney is starting to get. So that's what you'd be paying him for, is for years into his 30s. And it's just usually not very good business, especially with the model that the Chiefs run. So I like I said, I think it's more of a mix now. You're right. I think that the prevailing sentiment last year was that you sign Trey and you're walking from Toney. I get why that, philosophy and belief was maybe not as common during this season, and maybe it changed, but it's probably still the smart move. Now, I think that unfortunately, just the reality of the situation is that the most likely scenario is probably that the Chiefs are going to part ways with both of them. And that's difficult. It's a difficult call, but it's just the price of doing business. And I get, I know there's a lot of people on both sides of the salary cap that, the Chiefs are in salary cap nightmare, and others say the cap is not as fake. It's not real. The reality of it is that it's somewhere in between. I mean, the cap is real. The Chiefs situation is not as dire as some will tell you, but they're not also in the ability to just sign everybody they want and keep everybody they want at whatever price. You're going to have to walk away from somebody. And you know what? The chances are the Chiefs might have to walk away from both of these guys, unfortunately. Steeman Demon, why the shakeup on defensive coaches when it was the offense that took a hit? The defense held relatively close until the turnover. Need to shake up the offensive assistant coaches. I mean, I'm not buying into that there isn't going to be turnover on the offensive staff. I mean, there still could be. Chiefs don't. I mean, sometimes they have their coaching staff in place before the combine. I remember a couple of years ago when they brought in Ken Flagel, it was at the combine, and Andy Reid told us about that. Some years they've had it pretty much set in place, and we'll say, hey, yeah, don't expect a lot of changes on the coaching staff. Remember the moves that have been made so far, as far as the additions and subtractions. I mean, these were coaches weren't fired; they're going for promotions. They're going for new jobs. Terry Braden's going to get to be a defensive line coach at Nebraska. Donald DeLisio is going to be a position coach in the secondary. I mean, going from, again, an assistant coach, so that's a step up. They're going to be making more money. I mean, those are big moves for both those coaches. And the fact that they're blocked in Kansas City, I mean, you're not moving on from Joe Cullen or Dave Merritt. And I'm assuming that both those guys are staying. I don't think that the Chiefs would have let either one of those coaches go. I think they would have tried to match them, give them more money, whatever it took to keep both those guys if they thought that they were going to have a departure of either Dave Merritt or Joe Cullen. So, that's at least a positive there. But, I mean, at this point, we haven't seen anybody in the offensive staff get a new job. And I can't really say that that's a surprise. I mean, the resume that the offensive assistants have put on the last couple of years going to make it difficult for them to find new jobs. If Andy Reid wants to shuffle up the coaching staff, he's going to have to shuffle it up himself. He's not going to be able to bet on guys getting jobs and leaving unless there's anybody on this coaching staff that thinks that they're in trouble. And I don't get the sense that Andy Reid has sent that message, and maybe he's not ready to make that turnover on the coaching staff. I think it's something that should be considered. Nick and I have talked about it. But I mean, that's why the shakeup, at least, is on the defensive side, is you've got guys looking for promotions who have put good work on tape. Their teams have done good work. People see that and they're like, okay, we need to hire who's working with these players. Terry Braden and Donald DeLisio have put in their dues. They've had success with their players. They get promotions, and if there's not a space for them in Kansas City, they can get the promotions elsewhere. So we'll see if there's still going to be a shakeup on the offensive side. But like I said, I mean, the difference between the defensive and offensive side, defensive guys are getting offers. Offensive, nobody's trying to steal anybody off the offensive staff right now with the way that this offense has looked over the last couple of years. So it's still a possibility, but it's going to be internal decisions at this point. Chris, how many new starters should KC have in 2025 versus how many new starters they will have in 2025? Ooh, that's a good question. I'll tell you what, I may have to just pull up the depth chart real quick because I can think of a few that they will have right off the top and everything. I mean, the offensive line, obviously, we'll start on the offensive side. I mean, they needed, obviously, a change at left tackle. They'll have a different one there. They don't necessarily want a change at both the guard spots, but they have them anyway. I'm expecting at this point, honestly, that the Chiefs will have 3 new starters next year on the offensive line: left tackle, left guard, right guard. Maybe players, a couple of those spots that are currently on the roster, but I'm assuming that they're going to have new starters at those spots. Always a possibility something gets worked out with Joe Toney. Maybe the Chiefs are able to, get that cap number to go down and keep him. But that's one. I mean, I still think there's a chance that the Chiefs could keep Hollywood Brown. They could keep DeAndre Hopkins. We'll see if that works out. But I don't think that they necessarily need to replace those. I think that at least one of those will be replaced. So if you want to look at it as 3 starting wide receivers, I think they will have 2. I mean, I think they'll have 1 new starter at least, maybe 2. I don't think they necessarily need any. Like I said, I think they'd be fine keeping Brown and Hopkins for another year and see how a full season healthy with those guys would go. We'll see about Travis Kelce. They don't need a new starter there, but they might have one. Running back's a good question. I mean, if the Chiefs are able to get a young speed back to come in here and compete with Pacheco, maybe that can be a job share at least, or maybe somebody can come in and beat up Pacheco. I don't know, but I don't. That might be at least where I think you would want to have somebody that come in that can push Pacheco for that starting job. I know I've glossed over it. I'm sure some of you will say that you wish that there's a change at starter at right tackle. I just don't think it's going to happen. Whether that fits into that the Chiefs need a change at right tackle, I don't necessarily think that's the case. Particularly because die is cast. I mean, Jawan Taylor's going to be on the roster in 2025, and if he's on the roster, he might as well start because no other reason to have him around if he's not starting and not playing. You can't pay a guy that much money to be on the bench, and I still think that I buy into the Chiefs' defense of Jawan Taylor, which is that he does more good than the troubles that he's had and the struggles that he's had, and I think there's some legitimacy to that, but. On the defensive side, and let me go back to my depth chart, make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. You'll have 1 new starter on the defensive front. Whether Tershawn Wharton, Mike Pennell, whoever you view as the starter there. I think it'll be hard for the Chiefs to keep Wharton. I mean, I'd like to keep him if I'm them, but so I think that's more of hey, they don't need a new starter, but they will have a new starter on the defensive line. Linebacker, I mean, once again, I would stick with the 3 that you've got there, but Nick Bolton may force their hand, and maybe we'll end up with a new starter there. Hey, I don't think Justin Reed's going to be back, so Brian Cook, Jaden Hicks will be kind of your first in line to be in that spot, so probably one safety next year. And whether you keep and try to retain Justin Reed, again, I mean, the smart business move is probably to walk from Justin Reed because the Chiefs just don't like to get third contracts for guys who aren't necessarily future Hall of Fame caliber players. And that's the smart business move. Walking from players, going into their third contract is typically a smart business move. Doesn't mean it's going to be working out. I mean, Justin Reed might go somewhere, have a great couple of seasons, but it's just the smart move versus maybe what you want to do. And corner's a good spot. I mean, that's an interesting one. I think the Chiefs would like to have a new starter because they would love to have a corner that comes in and they were able to acquire that would push Jalen Watson and challenge him for that number 2 spot. Not that they're looking to replace him, but just that they would love to, I think, just have enough depth at the corner spot that they could even consider that. But I'm assuming that at this point, McDuffie and Watson are probably going to be your starters. I mean, maybe in year 2, Najee Johnson coming back from the injury can push, but I mean, that's at least how I see it. I can see it breaking down right now. I mean, that can absolutely change over the next few weeks, and you get closer to the beginning of the new league year, and there's trades, all sorts of things can happen. You can choose to go in. This team club could choose to go in different directions, and maybe you do get something done with a Nick Bolton or a Trey Smith, and things change. But at least that's the way I kind of see it, at least right now, Chris. That's a really good question. That might be something I need to do a story on just so that it's kind of in writing and break it down a little bit more. Mr. M, Nate Taylor reported today that the Chiefs don't anticipate using any of the tags at all this offseason. Is it surprising to you or a decision you foresaw coming? I mean, that seems to be the way the Chiefs have been indicating they're going to go in this offseason for a while. And, I mean, to me, I mean, it's been heading this way since training camp. I mean, so, I spoke with Brett Veach back in August up in St. Joe. about the salary cap in particular, and as far as the franchise tags go. And one of the things that we discussed with, especially the Chiefs and the players that they have at the positions that they have, and how the cap figures are, determined. Because, we talked about this one for, sure. And, we can kind of get into the numbers here. Let me pull up so I can give you the exact numbers. But for instance, with the offensive line franchise tag, that number is determined by offensive line. It's not separated by tackles, guards, and centers. So, by and large, the franchise tag number is determined based on offensive tackles. So tagging Trey Smith is going to cost you $25.156 million. That's a lot for a guard. And you know what? Trey actually might end up getting a contract that's close to that. I mean, it's entirely possible that he gets something, whether it's a 5-year deal with $75 million guaranteed, so it shakes out to 3 for $75. That's entirely possible. Not ruling it out. But, if you've got to tag that player and it's not a structure where, you've got a year one, for a deal like that, that's more like a $10 million cap hit, and then you spread the cap hit over 4 years instead of 3. I mean, that's the way that these contracts are done, and the way the cap hits are usually adjusted. They're not designed, and the Chiefs right now, their cap situation is certainly not designed to be able to carry a $25.156 million cap hit for any period of time. So that's the difficulty in tagging Trey Smith. And that's why it always just seemed very unlikely that the Chiefs were ever going to use a tag on either Trey or Creed Humphrey if they got to that, because the cap number is so big. Conversely, linebacker is the exact same situation. It's determined by edge rushers, not by Mike linebackers. So the franchise tag for Nick Bolton is even worse. That's $27.05 million. So even less of a chance that you tag Nick Bolton because of that cost there. So, like I said, I've gotten the vibe from the Chiefs, and from my conversation with Brett all the way back to August, that the finances of using a tag this offseason, just doesn't make a lot of sense. And every indication I've gotten is that, that the Chiefs would they like to work out with something with Trey Smith? Sure, but and Trey's in a different. I mean, I think Trey's in a different category than L'Jarius Sneed was last season. But remember, the Chiefs basically only upgraded up to a high third in making that trade for L'Jarius. If they had let him walk and signed as a free agent somewhere, they would have gotten a 3rd round comp, which basically is a 4th round. So they basically got a full round better in tagging L'Jarius and then making the trade. That's at least a pretty good jump. There's a bigger challenge with doing that this year with Trey, because that cap hit is so large. It's larger than it was for the cornerback cap hit last year. And the Chiefs were pretty comfortable that they could tag L'Jarius and trade him. Now that's more challenging. So I'm not going to say that the Chiefs absolutely are not going to use the tag, because there's always a possibility that things change. And, maybe there's a scenario where they do come up with the idea that maybe they want to use a transition tag or something that they could pull together. But I do think it's likely that the Chiefs don't use the tag on anyone this offseason, just because of the finances of it, the way that the numbers crunch, and we'll see. But they've got a couple of weeks to decide. You don't have to make that decision until March 4th, and obviously situations can always change. But really the challenge is, how long can you carry a cap hit like that $25.1 million? And teams are going to know. They know. That the Chiefs are going to, if they tag Trey Smith, that the Chiefs are in a situation where they either need to get that deal reworked immediately, or they need to move him immediately. And that's not a great position to be in, as far as trying to make a deal. So, Scott, considering the tag number Trey Smith would require, is there a chance that it's Bolton that gets tagged due to the lower tag number? And see, that's the crazy thing, Scott, like I was just pointing out. Because there's a linebacker tag and not an inside or an outside linebacker tag, middle linebacker tag, that cap number is all determined by outside linebackers and 3-4s that are edge rushers. And, that's one thing. teams have been and players have been arguing for years about, whether a player is a linebacker or a defensive end, because it affects their cap number. I mean, it affected, Chris Jones. There was even, some debates behind the scenes, when Chiefs were using the tag with Chris and everything. Is like, hey, should he be considered a defensive end or a defensive tackle? Because cap numbers different. The franchise tag numbers are different. So, I mean, that's the challenge. Is like I said, I mean, that number for linebackers at just a little over $27 million. Makes even less sense for Nick. So, I even like next year looking at the cheapest tag for anybody is the running back spot. The franchise tag for running backs is 13.7. Goes up to, I mean, oddly enough, the linebacker tag, well, outside of quarterbacks, that's the linebacker tag is the highest tag that there is at that $27 million. So outside of quarterbacks, which is going to be, and these are projected because the NFL hasn't come out with the final number, so they might differ a little bit, but these are from Over the Cap, which does a great job, and they're usually their numbers are right on. Franchise tag for a quarterback could be 41.3. So that's certainly the outlier, but all these caps hits are, I mean, they're hard. I mean, they're high numbers, and unless you've got a premium position, and that's why, I mean, there might only be 8 or fewer tags that are used this year. I mean, it's becoming less and less of a weapon just because of how much the outliers that the top players in the league are making. And it just makes that franchise tag number difficult, that unless you are one of those top paid players as it is, or play a premium position. I mean, it might make sense if you've got T. Higgins, that you are thinking to yourself, hey, wait a minute, you know what? That might make sense to tag a guy like that and pay him on the tag for 2 years. 120% of the wide receiver tag is going to be like $30 million. There's receivers in the league making $30 million. Is T. Higgins a $30 million receiver? I don't feel like it, but for the Bengals, I guess he is. I mean, because it certainly looks like they're going to tag him again. But I mean, if the Chiefs do tag anybody, it's going to be Trey. But I do think that the chances of them doing that are pretty low. Mr. M's second question: it's been a bit quiet since there were some defensive staff coaching changes. Do you anticipate, and kind of addressed this earlier, we'll see. I mean, if it does, they're still to come. I mean, we just haven't seen any movement on the offensive side because we haven't seen anybody going to get any promotions. So we'll see if that happens on the offensive side, or the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Matt Nagy just decide that they need to make some changes going forward. We'll see if we hear anything from Andy next week at the Combine. Otherwise, it's usually sometime in March when the Chiefs, mid to late March when the Chiefs put out their full coaching list. So we'll see if they do that earlier than later this year. Uncle Charlie, is that hoodie Eagles green? I'm going to say no. I mean, I think it's it could be old Eagles green. I think it's more of a Kelly green, but here's, what, and I will say I was very self-conscious about, because this, I mean, I'm just going to say it. I mean, green's my best color. So I got a lot of stuff that's green because I'm told it makes my eyes pop. I don't know if it matters here on the podcast or not, on the live stream, but I got a lot of stuff that's green. But I was very self-conscious about making sure that I did not wear, because I didn't want to trigger anybody by wearing Eagles green. And like I said, I don't consider it Eagle green, but it is green. So, and it's Kelly green, which I don't consider Eagles green because they don't wear Kelly green anymore like they should. So there you go. Take that and put that in your pipe and smoke it. We'll see if Nick has any comments about that. My phrases when he comes in. He should be joining us here fairly soon. Infopocalypse. If KC got a true deep free safety, could Hicks beat out Cooks for the second safety spot? Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, Chiefs bringing in a free safety, I think Jaden Hicks is better equipped and better situated to be a strong safety. So I don't think that's a problem at all. I mean, I do think that Hicks can play both. Like I said, I think he's better at strong, which is absolutely one of the reasons why you drafted him last year, because you knew that he was a possibility that he could replace a Justin Reed. I think he's fairly flexible, but honestly, I mean, yeah, if you added true deep free safety, and you had Hicks as your a strong safety. If Cooks is your third safety and Chamari is your slot corner, that to me would be an absolutely ideal safety group. So if the Chiefs are able to do that, hey, whether it's through the draft or through free agency, if they're able to find a strong, I should use a different adjective there. If they're able to acquire a quality free safety and allow Jaden Hicks to play more strong, I think that would be a great pairing. KC Chiefs 12. Chiefs honeydew list. Rework Mahomes contract. That will be a guarantee. Extend Toney? Maybe. Extend McDuffie? Absolutely. Extend Bolton? Maybe happen. Sign free agent left tackle? Maybe. Sign Hollywood? Maybe. Draft wide receiver? They should. Although I'm going to be pushing for a day 3 on that one. Defensive line? Need 3 of them. It's my comment there. Running back? Speed back? Yes. Along with best player available with the remaining picks. Thoughts? Well, let's ask Nick, because Nick is ready. Nick is here.
Well. If it isn't Matt Derrick, we meet again.
Good evening, Nick. Ooh, I think your microphone needs to be reset. We are getting the XLR buzz of
It's hot in here with all the static electricity.
There you go. Now it's perfect.
It's all hot because of the static electricity, because we're going to have so many hot takes. I
just thought I was going to be hot from all those monitors behind you.
Yeah, there's that too. It's pretty warm.
How are you this evening, Nick?
I'm here, Matt.
Welcome to the party that never ends.
So we could really start the party.
Woohoo!
So let's light this candle.
And I'm only 29 minutes behind, so.
Oh, boy. I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
All right, KC Chiefs 12 brought his honeydew list. Curious what your thoughts are.
I already don't like it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, KC 12.
So rework Mahomes' contract.
You don't really need to rework it. You just they have the roster bonus built in to move over the 5 years of the contract. Extend Toney. That's the question I'm kind of curious about. I mean, the problem you run into here is like people – given what he did at left tackle and how much he helped them be able to get to the Super Bowl, because without him at left tackle, they probably don't get to the Super Bowl. And that offense struggles and they lose to the Houston Texans potentially if they don't have Joe Toney at left tackle. Then that offense has a bad day. So in some ways, you would potentially be rewarding him for what he did. The question is, what is he going to be over the next couple years? And that's kind of where, he's in his 30s, and just by human nature, the wear and tear on his body, he's going to slowly wind down in the next 2 to 3 years. So, that's the question the organization's got to ask themselves when deciding between him and Trey Smith. Trey Smith, you got to decide if he's got the ceiling that is worthy of getting the money that Toney had, or do they want to hold on to Toney and have a hypothetical backup left tackle in a pinch again if they need it. So that's the question only the organization can decide on that front. McDuffie, I would wait to do that because you need to get free agency done right now. Worry about getting what you need free agency and draft done. McDuffie's kind of a July-October conversation to where you try to figure that out. Bolton, I mean, look, let him test the market, see if the number's higher than what they're willing to pay, because Bolton's still a liability in coverage. Great downhill type of linebacker and everything, but there's still coverage issues that I wouldn't pay him top dollar on. Sign a free agent left tackle. I mean, they're going to have to. It doesn't, it's just a matter of if it's a starting caliber left tackle or if it's not. Sign Hollywood Brown is the next thing on this list. I don't know if Hollywood Brown's really ever going to be able to stay healthy, and that's part of his problem. That's why teams continue to either move on or let him go to new opportunities, is because his inability to stay healthy and to be able to create separation. So that's something the Chiefs got to evaluate if they feel like they can do that. Draft a receiver. We've talked about it. You draft a wide receiver every year because you need to be able to keep that cost low and keep that cupboard from being bare. Defensive line, yes, you draft. Running back, you draft. Yes. So there, I went down item by item, and we've itemized everything. We've audited it, and we are good to go.
I love it. And very few quibbles. Only thing you and I have talked about, and I will remind everybody, you're going to pry Nick Bolton out of Steve Spagnuolo's cold, dead hands.
Well, luckily he's not in charge of the checkbook. So.
Mr. M, what position would you prefer the Chiefs to take at pick 31 if you take away all of the best player available nonsense?
Under this hypothetical situation, look, the things you can never have enough of is offensive line, defensive line, and wide receiver. Those, I mean, corners you love to have, but the Chiefs right now, under their current situation with Dave Merritt, they can turn third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round players into serviceable corners, or secondary members for the most part, if they've drafted the right traits in that player. So that isn't something that you like I said, under the current route they go, that one's completely fine. Like that one you don't have to invest as high on as you would if a coach isn't routinely able to develop a player. So I would say that's kind of that. But look, I mean, defensive line, the Chiefs are always going to need cost-controlled pass rush and more pass rush and stronger pass rush and faster pass rush, no matter who the heck they have out there. So, like, routinely investing in that's what led the Eagles to do what they did. And if you look at the Eagles, something I did when I went on a journey over the past hour and a half because of people on Twitter about the left tackle thing, is the Eagles hit on Lane Johnson in 2013. And he's been able to play up until this point. Same draft class as Eric Fisher. Jason Kelce, Andy Reid hit on the year before in 2012. They were able to keep Kelce for a long time. Two positions they did not have to worry about. Then they had Jason Peters at left tackle and Andy Reid holdover. Then they drafted Jordan Mailata in the 7th round, and he replaced him. But Jeff Stoutland, the O-line coach, continually developed. Howie continually drafted, and the guys didn't go in until they needed them, until they were fully developed to be able to take over along the offensive line. So Eagles and Howie Roseman have always been really good at drafting. And right now, more than ever, because of who he has as an offensive line coach and what they're able to do on defense with Vic Fangio now, they have the right complements of coach and what the scouting department values to do. So I'm using that as part of it because Brett Veach came from that Howie Roseman scouting department. That's what a lot of people seem to forget. Is like Veach was a part of that Howie Roseman scouting department. So he's gotten to learn from Howie at various points in his career when he was in Philly.
And now, for once, Brett Veach and the Chiefs should have the advantage of drafting in front of Howie because, you know, I keep going back to, I was doing this before Super Bowl week. It's just been in the back of my mind, and I don't think we've talked enough about it. The 2023 NFL draft, Nick, because if the Chiefs could have found any way to get in front of the Eagles in 2023, I think they draft Nolan Smith. That guy just seemed designed for Joe Cullen, and obviously been a productive player for the Eagles.
I'll have to look at 2023 because I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Smith went 31, and Felix went 32.
Well, I mean, because I know they were trying to trade up for Zay Flowers. Didn't work out.
Couldn't get that high.
Then no. Anton Harrison, I know, was another one in their radar that they were after, but the Jaguars took him at 27. The Cowboys were pretty convinced that the Chiefs were trying to take Mozzie Smith and that he was associated with the Chiefs. And then at some point, I know the national reporters had Jamar Gibbs associated with the Chiefs. So I get the Nolan Smith thing. I think the Chiefs were in a really tough spot that year with the draft being in Kansas City. And I think if it wasn't in Kansas City, I think they either trade up or trade out.
And I forgot Miami had their forfeited pick that year, so actually it was 30-31. But I don't know. I think Dallas misread the situation. I think the Chiefs were trying to go up to get Nolan Smith, and nobody after the Cowboys was willing to deal. But because I still think if the Chiefs could have gotten up, I think they would have moved up, and I think it would have just unfolded a little bit differently. But that's the problem is if you're drafting at the end of the first round, there's a 95% chance that you're going to end up with a player that you've got a second round grade on. And that's just the thing to me. And that's why, best player available to me does factor into this. And, in the sense that I would rather take, especially depending on, where your grades are, but if I've got a first or a second round grade on a linebacker or a safety, I don't care, a tight end, name the position. That maybe that's not premium. If I've got a first or a second round grade on a player, and you're telling me that all the offensive tackles or defensive tackles or edge rushers that are left out there are third round quality, I'm going to take something else, because I want a player who's going to come in and contribute. The last thing you can do is give away value. So, but your mileage may vary. Mr. M, as of right now, how would you view the likes of Justin Ross, Tyquan Thornton, and Jason Brownlee making the 53 this season, given how bare the receiver room is looking? I'd still call them long shots, Nick. How about you?
Yeah, I'm not factoring them into like having to make this roster and everything. So right now, we'll see where the roster's at. We'll see the wide receiver room's at come August. Or, middle of July. I think middle of July we'll have a better estimate. But, Justin Ross, they've spent a lot of time developing. But, he's more of a toss it up outside and see how things go. And people saw how that went with DeAndre Hopkins this year. Whenever DeAndre Hopkins is more of a contested catch guy. Thornton, we'll see from a speed perspective what he can do route running-wise overall. And then Brownlee, I don't really have any expectations for. But collectively across the board, I just don't have expectations for any of them right now. Doesn't mean they can't impress and can't do anything. It just means that the Chiefs haven't put them on their 53 and had them play for, above anybody else to this point.
Yeah, I'm intrigued with Tyquan Thornton simply because of the speed, and we haven't had a chance to see him in this offense yet. So that's, to me at least, there's an unknown quality that it's like, hey, I want to see what happened. I've seen 2 years of Justin Ross, and I just haven't seen any impact of it yet. So I'm not expecting that to change. And Brownlee, it's something new, something different. But just given the special speed that Thornton has, I'm more intrigued about seeing that. But honestly, if I was going to rank them as far as their chances, and like I said, they're all, I would consider them all long shots to make the 53. But I would say Tyquan, Brownlee, and Ross would probably be my picks in that order, just because you got 2 guys that haven't had a chance yet, and 1 guy that's had 2 chances and hasn't really capitalized yet. Infopocalypse, any feeling on what KC thinks about Humphreys returning? Is it possible he wasn't fully back from the injury and could be better next year, or do you think that was it and he's spent? Also not discounting the fact that maybe both are true, Nick, but
so
he could still not be recovered fully from the knee, but he could also be spent.
Yeah, they really needed him out there left tackle, and they kept Joe Toney out there. So, I know he wants a full year to rehab and recover and see what he could be, and that's fine if you have that as an option, but I just don't feel comfortable making that the primary option. That's where you're putting all your eggs in that basket, and that's your left tackle, and that's what you're doing, because he could easily get hurt during training camp. He get hurt during preseason. We don't hope that for him, but those are all possibilities. So just for me, the reality is you're either going to have to trade up in the draft, or you're going to have to trade for a tackle, or you're going to have to sign a veteran tackle. And if a veteran makes the free agent market, there's a reason why he is on the market. It's either because of injuries, the cost they're asking for doesn't match, or they feel like the best days for that tackle are behind them. Like, good left tackles or elite left tackles do not make free agency. They are traded for picks, or they're still on that team, which is why I did that thing just a little bit earlier that's on Twitter of there are 15 starting left tackles in the NFL right now drafted by their original teams, and they are all drafted within the top 20. You have 3 trades. Laremy Tunsil, 13th overall to the Dolphins, that got traded to the Texans. Troy Williams, 4th overall, a long time ago, before Eric Fisher, that is with the 49ers, going to turn 37 this year. Then you have Vernon Lowell, who was with the Patriots, who's a 6th round pick. They got traded from the Vikings. Then you have 8 guys who were drafted outside of the first round. One of the most notables is going to be Deion Dawkins from the Bills. Second most notable is going to be Jordan Mailata, who's in the 7th round from the Eagles, who didn't really have a football background, but they had time to develop him behind Jason Peters. Then you have 5 free agents that are left tackles. The most notable that most fans will know will be Orlando Brown, who was drafted in the 3rd round by the Ravens, got traded to the Chiefs, and then was let to walk in free agency and went to the Bengals for a cheaper rate than what he was asking for from the Chiefs because he had a unique agent situation for quite some time. So, all that combined, what I'm getting at, you're either signing a free agent who another team feels their best days are behind them, or they don't feel fits them, or has injury history. You are trading for a tackle that a team also probably thinks that they want to go in a different direction, or you are trading up into the top 20 to take the tackle you want. But at the end of the day, no matter what it is, you have to be able to develop them. And you have to be able to correctly identify who the tackle is that you want. So that is my my overall synopsis on that at left tackle.
I mean, it really is fascinating when you think about it that, I mean, if you want a premium left tackle, you have to draft it in the top of the first round.
Yeah, you can't be lower than 20 if you're wanting one.
No, half the league has a left tackle drafted in the top half of the first round, basically. I mean, I know Darisaw, I think, is the lowest one at 23, but man, I mean, and the Chiefs had to trade up the one time that they went to 23 to get in that range. I mean, they traded up to get McDuffie, but I mean, normally the Chiefs have just not even been in a position to even trade up to there. Although you and I think, still would have traded, heaven and earth to get Joe Alt, but
be a little bit different situation. Because I mean, let's look at their draft class last year. Let's just look at their draft class last year. So they would have missed out on Worthy. They wouldn't have that threat. They probably wouldn't have gotten Kingsley. The Jared Wiley pick, I don't know if that would or wouldn't have been involved. I think you probably still could have had Hicks, Hunter Norzad. Hadden didn't work out, and you probably still could have had Hansen, but you probably wouldn't have the 3rd round pick from the Titans this year. You probably wouldn't have your 1st, and you may not have your 2nd this year as well. So, I mean, you would have given up anywhere between 5 to 6 picks, but you're not talking about left tackle.
Yeah. It's crazy. It is crazy. All right. I'll stop dwelling on left tackle until the next left tackle question comes up.
Oh, I bet it's in there somewhere.
Nick, have you been watching the Four Nations?
I just saw the highlights of the 3 fights in 9 seconds, and then
I was going to say that you saw the fights.
That's pretty much what everybody's seen for the most part.
I mean, I'm definitely going to be watching the final on Thursday night because this has been really fun, and these guys seem to really care about it. Which is clearly nobody in the NBA cared about the NBA All-Star game. So
I didn't even watch it. So
no, there's no
even the dunk contest has gotten bad. I used to love the 3-point shooting contest and the dunk contest.
Well, yeah, because the stars. Yeah, the stars were involved.
They don't even have that anymore.
No, that was a G League guy coming in and winning every year. No,
and NFL Pro Bowl is just awful now.
But of course, I'm assuming you're rooting for USA, right?
Yeah, why would you even have to ask that?
Exactly. What I'm wondering.
I've never been to Canada, Matt.
maybe Canada. Maybe.
I'm kidding. I know it's Canada. I apologize to anybody that's watching from there.
Although I was fascinated to learn that there are not enough Germans playing in the NHL for them to have qualified to field a team in this thing. Because even though they're one of the top hockey teams in the world. Mm-hmm. There are like no Germans playing in the NHL. How weird.
I don't know what to tell you, Matt.
Another Chris Smith. Do you think the plan is to not do much this year in free agency in order to get maximum comp picks from the losses of several free agents? I mean, that is a strategy, Nick.
See, okay, so here's where like I kind of get and I'm not annoyed at another Chris Smith on this, but just know that in advance. But like, I think Chiefs are going to do what they got to do to win. And so, like, all these, like, hey, you hypothetically may get a comp pick for this, this, or this. One, you're banking on another team paying them a certain rate. Then to get to that level of compensatory pick that might be a third round, might be a fourth round, might be this. But as you and I have talked about on here before, those comp picks are at the end of the round. Those are lower than where the Chiefs have typically been picking. So you just might as well assume those grades are pretty much a round lower than what they actually are. So if the Chiefs get a hypothetical 2 third-round comp picks, okay, well, that's fine, but you're essentially getting a high fourth round for that. And look, hey, if you trade those picks to move up and get a tackle the following year, hey, whatever, that's fine. But I don't know. I don't think a lot of teams, I'm not saying all teams, but I just don't think a lot of teams are like, all right, well, we're going to let these 10 guys go and see if we can get 4 comp picks. Like, I think at the end of the day, a lot of teams have to win now. They have to figure out a way to win. And if they would rather get the picks right here and now whenever they can impact them versus hypothetically waiting on a year later type of thing.
Yeah, and this is the weird counterintuitive thing, because I think that, like, when it comes to Trey Smith's situation, a lot of people would say, okay, well then why don't you go ahead and tag Trey Smith, because he's worth more than a third round comp, which is basically a fourth round pick. You should be able to trade Trey Smith for more than a fourth round pick. Well, except that if the Chiefs do tag Trey Smith, teams are going to know that they need to move him because he's got a $25 million cap hit that they can't afford. So there's no reason for anybody to pay the Chiefs top premium, because they know that he would absolutely have to be priced to move. So there's a disincentive there as far as, the Chiefs to tag and trade him. But, the way that the Chiefs, with the money that they have to spend in free agency and the resources that they have, when you have this situation with a guy like Trey Smith that is going to hit the market, you can pretty much bet the Chiefs know they're going to get a third round comp for Trey Smith, because they're not going to sign an equivalent free agent. I mean, he's going to get a big contract, it looks like. Chiefs aren't going to sign anybody. They're not going to sign a free agent of the same value of Trey Smith. If they sign anything, I mean, it might set off something like they might sign somebody that would offset the departure of a guy like Tershawn Wharton. But so maybe they don't get a 5th round or a 6th round pick here. They're going to get, and most likely, a 3rd round pick, because I just can't see them. If they're going to spend that kind of money, they're going to keep Trey Smith. They're not going to sign somebody else's free agent for the money that Trey Smith is going to get.
Now, Matt, there might be a 30-year-old left tackle that gets released. We don't know about that. They've got to pay top dollar to. So tread lightly, Matt.
And then you just wait until May, and then you sign them.
They're not going to be able to wait until May if it's a premium tackle. There's other teams that need left tackles.
The Scott's question kind of fits into this too. How many Chiefs free agents are considered priority free agents that would get draft compensation in return? I mean, it depends on 2 things with the formula, Nick. I mean, it depends on how much they sign for and how much they play.
Yeah. But, so, I mean, Scott's looking for names, Matt, okay? So
I know.
Give him names. I'll give him names for us. It's
go for
likely going to be Trey Smith. It would likely be Nick Bolton. It would likely be Justin Reed. Maybe Charles Omenihu. Maybe Hollywood Brown. And then you're hoping Wharton gets more than $7 million a year. But like from a comp pick perspective, those would probably be the popular ones in the wheelhouse of who could be in the compensatory pick formula.
And, remember this last year, Willie Gay signing for $3 million per, and I mean, that was the cutoff. I mean, Willie Gay looks like he is going to be if the Chiefs get a 7th round comp pick, it's going to be for Willie Gay. Yeah, right now, Over the Cap has him listed as the very last comp pick in their formula, and the way that they calculate the way that it's going to unfold. So, I mean, if it did that way, I mean, anybody that signs for $3 million or more per year could qualify for the formula. And obviously, you offset that if you lose some versus gaining some. But I mean, yeah, all those guys would fit in. Tershawn Wharton might fit into that formula. I could certainly see him getting $3 million per for a period of time. Trying to think if there's anybody else that we're neglecting. I mean, if Hollywood doesn't come back, if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't come back, could they qualify for the formula? Possibly. I mean, there could be a lot. I mean, and then once again, you have to account for who you signed that's going to offset that. But I mean, the Chiefs could end up having a lot of free agents that qualify for the formula next year.
So as of right now, for people that, like Matt said, if you look at Chiefs wise, Nick Allegretti was canceled out by Hollywood Brown. Tommy Townsend was canceled out by Carson Wentz. Willie Gay was the only one that was left remaining, and he got $3 million a year. Nick Allegretti got 5.3. Townsend got 3. So you're needing people, for the most part, to get paid top dollar. So, like for example, let's take the Baltimore Ravens. Patrick Queen got $13.67 million. They're expected to get a fourth for him. Jadeveon Clowney got $10 million. They're expected to get a fifth for him. So, like, you take somebody like Gabriel Davis from the Bills. Their projection is it'll be a fifth round for him at $13 million. Leonard Floyd at $10.5 million. They're expected to get a fifth for him. Somebody that'd be accurate here, like Robert Hunt from the Dolphins, they're expected to get a third for him because he got $20 million. So, like, the guys like we talked about name wise, those are likely the ones that could fit into that. What the Chiefs do in terms of signing can cancel them out. So, I mean, like, that's why I don't really worry about it until free agency's over. I'm like, okay, see you after the fact. Like, people always are like, all right, so if you do this, you do that. And I'm like, well, there's like 18 other things that may happen between now and then. So, like, after May, then you can keep tabs on it.
Just let you know when it's all done, right, Nick?
Yes.
The Chiefs at Red Royce, the Chiefs are in cap. You know what? I say BS on that. If I understand right, Chiefs could get something like $40 million freed up. Yeah, I mean, and I think that I think what is it over the cap? I think in their maximum value restructure, I think there's like the Chiefs in theory could free up like $80 million. Now that I think would also include like Travis Kelce not coming back next year. It would include walking on Joe Toney. It would, I think, also include maximum restructure of Patrick Mahomes, which I think he's got a cap number for $48 million for next year. Some of that's roster bonus, some salary. So, I mean, yeah, you could conceivably free up almost $40 million with Mahomes restructure alone. Doesn't mean the Chiefs will do that because they haven't always maxed out and capped out Mahomes' contract, but they could. I mean, I started at the very beginning of the show, Nick. I mentioned the fact that, hey, some people say that the Chiefs are in cap heck and there's nothing that they can do. There are others that say that the cap is fake. Don't worry about it. The reality is in between. As with most things, it's all about moderation.
You want to know the fun part that people always leave out though about the cap not being real?
What's that?
The owner still got to write a check for parts of that. So that's what's real in that whole thing. People just assume, well, they waved the wand and moved the base salary to a signing bonus. Guess what? Owner pays that out of his bank account. So yeah, like owner's got to be able to cover some of those things. Like, and so to the owner, that is very real.
And and this is a debate too that you really starts getting into the weeds, but it's one that I've seen popping up and everything about that. The difference between cap and cash, which obviously there's a difference. And when you hear people talk about that, and in NFL circles, cap and cash is essentially the notion that for teams that they want to spend about the same amount of money that there is in cap each year. And the Chiefs are typically a cap and cash team. Clark Hunt is not going out and just spending $150 million one year and then $450 the next. I mean, he's spending at about the cap each year, give or take, a little bit. But the Chiefs are typically one of those teams. I think I saw the number on the Eagles because the Eagles are one of the teams that just absolutely loves void years. And that's one thing that the Chiefs just do not do. I mean, the Chiefs have just like a couple of contracts that have void years in them, and Mahomes is one. I mean, it's got fake years on the end of it, but there's actually a reason for that. The Chiefs put those in there because it's really just to allow for when they do restructures in the future and moving money around. So there's actually a purpose to it. But the Eagles have something like $350 million tied up in void years, which means those are hits that they're going to take, roughly 5+ years from now that they've already accounted for, that they're going to have the cap. Those guys are going to be retired, and the Eagles are going to be paying the cap. And I get it. They got a Super Bowl, so tip your hat to them. But one of the reasons why the Chiefs don't do that is because they believe that that their window is 10 years wide, that they think that they can win Super Bowl as long as they have Patrick Mahomes every single year. And they just don't see the need and the reason for, one day they may go down that road, but it's going to be at the end of the Patrick Mahomes era when they know that, hey, the window is closing. They don't feel like they need to do that because they don't feel like the window is closing. They want to be, I'm not saying that they want to be, I'm not trying to say that they're being all haughty and trying to be responsible or anything like that, because they're trying to win, but they're trying to win for a long period of time. And if all you're doing is trying to win 1 year, you can blow out the salary cap and not worry about it. That's my small mini rant.
Good job, Matt. I'm proud of you. Yeah, so the Eagles have $18 million in cap space right now, but if you look at their cap numbers, what's crazy about that is Jalen only counts 21, AJ Brown's 17.5, Lane Johnson's 17, Jordan Mailata's 15.3, Darius Slay's 13.7, and all those guys I named, they can't get rid of without taking on massive cap losses. So, and then you go into Dallas Goedert at 11.8. He's the only one they can save $700,000 on. And then you go to all these other guys they just paid money to. Devontae Smith with his new contract, Bryce Huff with his contract, Saquon Barkley with his contract, and then Landon Dickerson with his contract. Jalen that they have from a rookie perspective still, and then Brandon Graham they're getting ready to lose, but there's void. That's one of their void years right there. So, and you just keep going down the list, and they have so many guys that are making over $5 million a year. And then you go into next year, they're projected to have $36 million in cap space, and that's just, yeah. So the Eagles are in a situation where it's interesting.
Okay, yeah, they've got. I was just looking at it, for example, just to see how crazy the Eagles, and some of their contracts are. They have some void years for, like, let's see, what was it? In 2030 right now, Lane Johnson has dead money in 2030. Mm-hmm. Lane Johnson might retire at any moment.
He's probably going to try to play one more year, see if they can run him back. But yeah, he's going to be.
He's not going to be playing in 2030.
He's going to be 35 this year and running it back. So after that, when he turns 37 in 2027, they got a void. That's when the void years start for him. So
they've got 6 guys right now with void years going into 2031, where they will have. They've got dead money on Jalen Hurts of $10 million potentially in 2032, and he's gonna be 35, 34. And maybe not even in the league anymore. Yeah, when you hear the Chiefs, are being one of those teams that that don't blow out the cap and don't go crazy, just remember that's how the Chiefs are not doing it. They don't have. Say what you will about some of their contracts, they're not going to have dead money on Juwan Taylor in 2032.
Do you like his 2029 cap hit, Jalen Hurts, though, when he's 31?
I did not see that. I did see Jordan Mailata's for 2030.
Want me to tell you?
Do tell me.
Okay, so when he turns 31 in the void year, his cap number right now is $97.5 million.
Yes, the Eagles have some of those crazy ones because in 2030, Jordan Mailata has a base salary of $99,999,999. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for when he's 33, yes. 34, 35, he's going to be
the
top paid left tackle at $100 million each year.
Yes. And Howie Roseman, I get it. They love to, but like I said, they've got $350 million in my understanding in delay and deferred cap costs that are going to be, that is more than the cap in any one single year, Nick. Oh. And even if you spread that out over 5 years, that's going to be like a Saints-esque $70 million in dead money.
Hey, don't you bring the Saints into this? They're on their own level of kicking the can down the road.
I still want to see what happens with the Browns. That's the classic team, but I digress. All right. Family member Luke Jacobs, Nick.
Well, first off, he's got a great last name. That's just fact.
So this question's for you. I'm gonna give you this question because I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. What's the chance that Veach allows Trey Smith to walk with nothing in return?
I mean, I think the Chiefs are going to obviously talk with his representation at the combine, just like they do with most players, and see where the number's at. And then they'll know one way or the other where the number's at and what they can do from there. So, I mean, look, do I personally want Trey Smith back? Yeah, I think he's still an ascending player. And I think he gives them great guard play. And I think with a better right tackle down the road, I think he can be an even better player. But I think he gets caught on an island too much on his own because of how wide the tackle setting and some of the twists and stunts. I think he gets burned on, and there's not a lot he can do about it other than having to decide if he's going to hold so 15 can stay upright and take the penalty, or, I think he gets put in a bind a lot. So I think Trey's still an ascending player for the next 4 years. And I personally think he's worth the investment. I would love to see if there'd be something where they could do 18 per year, similar to what Creed Humphrey's contract was. But if you do Trey's contract that way, then the reality is I don't think you can maintain Joe Toney's number on the cap. Like, I just don't think you can pay more than 3 players on the offensive line $20 million per year average. Doesn't mean you couldn't do it this year and he replaces the right tackle situation. You can look at it however the heck you want financially. But at some point, you're going to be paying a left tackle $20 million per year if everything goes right down the road. You're going to be paying that to a left tackle. So the question is, where do you take that from along the offensive line to pay the left tackle long term?
I have nothing to add. 100%. Sign off. I'm gonna give this one to you, Nick, because I talked about this earlier, but I want to get your thoughts. Should the Chiefs try and pursue and see if Kyle Pitts is available, and if so, is there something that would make that deal make sense to you?
From watching Kyle Pitts, he wants to catch passes. He does not want to block. So in terms of the Chiefs' 2 tight end sets, he has no interest in blocking. He wants to be a receiver, but he doesn't have the explosiveness at receiver. He's not the equivalent of Travis Kelce from an athletic perspective. I just don't see a real physical tight end there personally. So if I'm in the Chiefs' shoes, that's kind of one of those things where I get everybody likes the athletic ability and everything. I just don't. There's a reason why the Falcons would be letting him be available, and it's because he doesn't do everything at the tight end spot that they would want for their tight end.
There you go. You heard it here first. Sharon, Traveris Ward, love to see him opposite McDuffie. I mean, this is making me really feel old, Nick. I mean, this is a guy that, my beat career covering, Traveris Ward. Now he's already ready to go for a 3rd contract. This is making me feel old, Nick.
Yeah, I think he's 28. He's in that 28, 29 range right now.
Yeah, he's going to be 28, going to be 29 this next season. And he finally showed signs of maybe injuries and life catching up to him in 24. I mean, he had a couple of really good years in San Francisco, had some injuries this past year. I know Pro Football Focus, which used to love Traveris Ward, did not love him in 2024. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, he had a heartbreaking off the field issue too.
Absolutely no. I mean that's not. And I mean I do want to draw a line between that. I mean that can absolutely affect your play. So, but I think he can still. I mean I think he can still be a very good and productive player. I just don't know if he would be in the Chiefs' plans, because that's not typically. I talked about earlier. I mean, signing guys under 3rd contracts, not normally their thing, not normally their jam.
And the other part of it is what kind of numbers going to command on the market, because there's some projections that he's going to get $15 million a year from a team, and that's just not a number that, if the Chiefs are paying that type of number, they got to pay that to Trent McDuffie over the next handful of years. They can't.
Exactly.
They got to give it to an ascending player. They can't give it to a guy that that's been here before and is inching near 30. So I mean, if Traveris Ward came here on like a $4 or $5 million a year deal, I think that's realistic. But I don't think he's in that market. I think he's in a much bigger market financially.
From Tyler, any guess on when we hear about Rashee Rice potential suspension? Do you guys think he's for sure going to get some sort of suspension? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt, Nick. He's going to get some type of suspension. But once again, I mean, the NFL just does not take a position on suspensions until a legal process has played out. And that still appears nowhere close to being played out. I mean, we'll see. I know he's got a court date set for this summer, I believe. But unless something dramatically changes, I mean, the NFL just doesn't usually take action until a legal matter has resolved itself.
So, yeah, I mean, right now, like Matt said, until there's legal clarity, I don't think anything's going to happen. So once there's legal clarity, then you can start legitimately asking that question. But no matter what, him coming back from the injury he sustained, that in itself is going to be a thing, to where he may not be who he was before that injury for a little bit. And so that's why you've got to come up with another plan at receiver to help in the event that he's not who he was before for a little while until he gets back from that injury. And then also if the legal clarity comes and then there is a potential suspension. So you got twofold there to where you're hoping all that resolves in whatever situation that's going to. But you're going to need additional receivers opposite of Xavier Worthy that aren't Rashee Rice because of both those circumstances.
Absolutely. Steam and Demon, any truth to the reports that Trey Smith wants to go back home? Would he refuse a trade and force his way to the Titans? I mean, I haven't heard that. I have no reason to believe that's a part of it. But, and, I mean, typically, if a player is going to, refuse a trade or deal with a team and like that, there's usually because it's something has led up to that. There has been nothing between the Chiefs and Trey Smith that has led you to believe that anything like that would happen, that things would just fall apart so badly that something like that. And honestly, I mean, I've gotten every indication I have that, Trey considers Kansas City just as much as home as Tennessee. So I don't necessarily see that being a big part of it, but I mean, could there be a small part of the equation, Nick, that when we're talking about, the franchise tag and what you deal with how you deal with Trey Smith, could be a small part of it that, the Chiefs know that, hey, the trade value that they could get with him on the franchise tag, because everybody knows that they would have to sell whatever they could possibly squeeze out of maybe choosing the destination for the best, trade value for Trey Smith isn't worth the message that they would send to other free agents and other potential players to say, hey, we're going to restrict you. We're not going to let you go where you want to go. We're going to decide where you want to go. I mean, if the Chiefs know they're not getting anything better than the third and they can't afford to carry the Trey Smith number, are they just better off letting Trey go on his own, get his own deal, rather than getting involved in a trade to choose, be a part of where he goes to his destination? Because it's just good for business with other players that, come to this team and just treating them the right way. Let's put it that way.
So in terms of the Titans aspect, I mean, they got J.C. Latham at left tackle. They've also drafted Peter, the tackle from Northwestern that they moved to left guard. And then they've got a draft pick at right guard, and they've got another draft pick at right tackle. So, Mike Bergonzi, with him being in Tennessee, I get the connection and everything, but there may be other pieces of what the Titans need to worry about in terms of what they're trying to build with that offense to try to mimic what the Cincinnati Bengals do. So, I don't know if that's necessarily the home for Trey. I think the Bears is going to be the most likely situation, not just because of Ryan Poles, but because the Bears need offensive line across the board for Caleb Williams. They desperately need offensive line. And wouldn't stun me if the Broncos or Chargers snuck their way into trying to get Trey Smith either. So that would be annoying to watch him in AFC West games and to watch him do what he does. But at the end of the day, I mean, if they can get something done with him, that's awesome. I'd love to continue to see him play in a Chiefs uniform. But if they don't, I think they're going to show the respect to him, let him hit the market, because they were fortunate enough to get him in the 6th round because of the medical situations, because he was a second, third round talent with just what he put on tape, minus the medical stuff.
Yep. All right, Nick, lightning round. I swear, I promise, it's lightning round time.
We're gonna have to change the name to something that is quick and speedy.
Alex, guys, here's a crazy one. Kelce retires and the Chiefs trade for George Kittle for a 1 or 2 year rental. My Iowa fandom being biased. I mean, I'm going to say it would be difficult to do because just looking at it, he's got $20 million in dead cap money. So I don't think the 49ers would be eager to eat that. Plus, he's 32. He was not that much younger than Kelce.
Yeah, I'm just going to burst the bubble right now. The chances of George Kittle coming here when he's one of the leaders of the 49ers.
That's the other part of the problem, too.
Probably not working out.
I mean, the good thing for you, Alex, is that he's a very good Iowa Hawkeye, but I think it's just not going to work out. Nikki, why not extend Toney to save cap? Can't see how having 3 new O-line starters would be better than keeping Toney. I mean, really, the biggest argument against extending Toney, to me, Nick, is just that he's going to be 33 next year.
Yeah, so I mean, like, whatever, like, if you give him, yeah, like you said, if you extend him multiple years, like, you're just, I hate to say it, but I mean, logic is you're going to start to see the downslope of his physical ability year by year. It's going to be a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. So, like, that's kind of where I get people keep holding on to him being a Pro Bowler and him kind of saving him at left tackle and everything. But I think people need to understand you're going to be getting a descending player from a financial perspective. And with how much people are in uproar about how the offensive line performed, like, the reality is this. You have 3 guys on that offensive line that are essentially on average going to be above $18 million per year, with Toney, Jawan Taylor, and Creed Humphrey. And we're not even talking about Trey right now, who's potentially going to get over $20 million a year, whether it's from the Chiefs or somebody else. So you had 4 caliber offensive linemen that are worthy of potentially $20 million, and you still had that happen in the Super Bowl to you, even after the rebuild and everything. So what I want to emphasize to people, and I'm going to continue to emphasize no matter what, is there's something much bigger that they have to figure out. If it's in scouting from a characteristic perspective, is there something that's not clicking? Is there something from a developmental perspective that's not clicking? Because they have invested financially, they have invested in draft picks, and it has not correlated into having a dominant offensive line for the most important investment they can make in the NFL with their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add, Nick. I'm gonna let it stand. Lightning round. No, I mean, like I said, I mean, you're painting to me, my one quick note, you're painting the optimistic picture, which, and I mean, and I say this, I love Joe Toney. I mean, he's one of the best offensive linemen that I've ever watched, and watching him, the way that he goes about his job, it's amazing. He is a pro's pro. But you're even like, that's the optimistic, is that he just gradually declines. Some players just fall off a cliff. I'm not saying that's going to, and you don't know that. I mean, it can happen to anybody. It can even happen to the best pros can just all of a sudden at 34 not have it anymore. So the gradual decline is always your best case scenario. But anytime you sign a player over 30, it could be the end of the road, could be any time. Michael, does, and I assume you're talking about Mitch Schwartz, have coaching experience to trust fixing Kingsley? I think Mitch Schwartz enjoys what he's doing right now, which is mostly making brisket.
Mr. Schwartz has made it kind of pretty clear that he has no interest in coaching through when he responded to these questions on his Instagram Q&A. It seems like would he be okay working with a player one-on-one type of thing, kind of for fun off to the side, maybe, but that's different than, because I know he enjoys spending time with his daughter, and like you said, he's a very talented cook. I know he loves to play his golf too, and he's got that golf simulator at his house. So Mitchell's enjoying his time, and so is his brother Jeff, who is going to put out a YouTube video tomorrow that I'm looking forward to, and going to retweet once Jeff puts it out, about the Chiefs' offensive line and his overall analysis that he was getting pushback on today, I think.
You made me think. Maybe I should let Mitch Schwartz know that I do have experience as a babysitter, because I'd be glad to watch the little one. You need somebody to house it to make sure that the golf simulator is okay.
Oh, I saw what you did there.
Mitchell, perfect and realistic draft pick player at number 31. I think I can answer this one for you, Nick, because I know it's the same answer for me. Way too early.
Here's the thing, and I'm just gonna tell people that are routinely on here and everything, like, I'm not gonna be through the draft for quite some time. Like, I just got done from basically middle of July until the Super Bowl ended. I have spent, and Matt has spent, our entire time with football. And I've done it from a Chiefs perspective, from a college perspective, and from a high school perspective. And so, like, for people that don't know, I took PTO this week just so I can reset mentally from the grind of July until February. And having to make sure your phone's available, to even be looking at your phone on holidays and stuff like that, to be able to keep tabs on not only the Chiefs, but for me, the entire Kansas City sports world. So, like, I'm on PTO Wednesday through Saturday this week, and I'm doing that to mentally reset. So I've been watching some Cobra Kai and some other stuff like that to just not deal with football. So, like, sorry, I'm seeing the comments here.
Oh no.
But no, it's not bad. So, like, I'm just telling you, man, like, I mean, draft questions, I understand you're passionate about it. You're ready to be excited about it. You want to know who to keep tabs on at Combine, all this type of stuff and everything. I am just nowhere near that. And it's going to be a while before I'm going to be at that point.
Yes, and in case you can't tell, I have, I think, my postseason cold that always kicks in once you let your guard down, Nick, and the adrenaline stops, and you stop the rest for just 2 seconds. I get sick every year at the end of the season. So yes, and right now I will be diving into the draft and start looking at that in the next couple of days, especially because Combine's next week and it's time to start. That's when my kind of focus always starts to change. Right now, I'm really focusing on my.
Cold, Matt?
I'm focused.
All right, then. You're not gonna get me, Matt.
Nope. Germaphobe Nick is definitely guarding against me.
I'm kidding. I know it's a computer.
I am more worried right now about my college football 25 dynasty, and I'm 1-11 in my first year at Nevada, and it's just not going well.
Well, you better step up.
I gotta step it up.
Stop giving you NIL money.
Uncle Charlie, if Trey Smith leaves, thoughts on Bears free agent left guard Tevin Jenkins, who obviously was a favorite of a lot of Chiefs fans when he was. I mean, that same year, the Trey Smith draft.
So I get it and everything, but you drafted Kingsley Suamataia, you drafted Hunter Norzad, you drafted CJ Hansen for the hypothetical situation that you were going to lose Trey Smith or Joe Toney. So if you're going to invest those picks in them, you better develop them and you better play them. Otherwise, why are you spending picks on that instead of other positions? So that's what they need to be doing. So Tevin Jenkins, let somebody else pay for him to be an interior offensive lineman. And if the Bears are letting him walk, there's a reason why the Bears are letting him walk. Because they have one of the worst lines in the league.
Mr. M, what do you think happens with Skyy Moore this season?
Nothing different than has happened before. Like, he might be on the roster, he may be at training camp, he might get hurt, but I think you've seen what he's going to be in this Chiefs offense at this point. So, like, expecting anything different is just unrealistic.
I mean, I would say it's a make or break year, but I mean, I think this is definitely the year I think he goes in with the most difficult challenge. He's going to have to work to earn a spot. I mean, I get it, Nikki. I mean, I'm looking, Nikki. It looks like you're wearing bird green there too. So I'm just giving you a hard time. I mean, I know it's green. I know this is green. I don't think it's eagle green, but I'm just saying. Lightning round. Hope from Cali Cash. Hope this question doesn't irritate anyone, but did you guys see CJ Gardner-Johnson on live? Said he knew by the second quarter was over, and Mahomes showed he was scared. I haven't heard that particular line yet. Nick, have you heard that or seen that clip?
Gardner Johnson said a lot of things over the past 2 weeks. There isn't a camera or live stream opportunity that guy's going to miss right now. He's eating up that 15 minutes of fame, and so he's going to take every chance he can to mention the word Mahomes, Kelce, or Chiefs in any way, shape, or form, so that he continues to get the attention, both positive and negative, that he can. So, congrats to him.
I will say this. I mean, I know that, the one thing that from the 2023 parade that seemed to, really annoy the Eagles the most was the 0 sacks, those 0 sack shirts that the offensive line was wearing, because there was some mentioning of that as far as, some motivation that the Eagles have, which just goes to show you that, what, all NFL players are as petty as Patrick Mahomes. They all will get their inspiration and motivation from just about anywhere. But I'm just going to say, I mean, it did sound like that the Eagles themselves, they really had the Chiefs stuck in their heads, because there was a lot more trash talking of the Chiefs at their parade and their celebration than I feel like the Chiefs ever did in any of their celebrations. I could be wrong, and maybe it's, and I don't think I'm any particularly sensitive in any of this, but it just seemed that they had, I mean, and give them credit. I mean, they used the motivation well and drove them to a victory, but man, they really seemed like the Chiefs were stuck in their heads for 2 years.
Matt, you got a money question.
I know. I was just getting ready to go to that. Siam, do the Chiefs get any draft compensation for Mike Borgonzi? Unfortunately, they do not. So far, I mean, nobody that the Chiefs have lost would qualify for any compensation in the NFL formulas. So,
yeah, there's nothing else I can add to that.
I was going to say, and I'm trying to think if there's any scenario where, I mean, really, really the only the compensation for coaches or front offices are in the minority hiring compensation, and Chiefs haven't lost anybody yet who would qualify. So I can't see them losing anybody that would qualify. So nope, won't be any draft compensation for anybody that they've lost this offseason. But appreciate the question, Simon. Thank you very much. Mitchell, doesn't Mostert make sense for a season? Even if his age, he's better than anyone on the roster. He's got some speed, Nick, but he's getting up there in years.
Pretty sure he's 33 years old at this point.
How old he is? Dang.
Like people. Yes.
I mean, and then once again, there's a reason he's available.
And he's 32 right now.
So
he's 32 and turns 33 in April.
33 in April. Yeah. I mean, there is a reason he's available, and that is old.
He's available because he's turning 33 in April.
Yeah. I mean, that is at the age at which Andy Reid would say you are a dinosaur. So,
Jerick McKinnon was 31.
And he was a dinosaur already. I mean, give it to Raheem for lasting as long as he had. But
yeah, Jerick McKinnon turns 33 this year as well in May.
A1, what should the Chiefs do with Taylor? Should they restructure him? If they do it, pretty much locks him in for 26. I mean, you can always just move money around for the sake of moving it around without adding more money to the deal. So, I mean, if you want to cut a player a check for a signing bonus and stretch it out over a couple of seasons, you can. I mean, Chiefs could do that. I mean, they certainly could bring his number down a little bit, but I mean, once again, it just kicks the money down the curb a little bit for a player that won't be in your plans probably beyond 25. So it's just the question of whether or not you want to do that, right?
If I'm in the Chiefs' shoes, you're riding out this year, and then you're doing what you got to do next year, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I can say it both ways, but like I said, the Chiefs, with the way that they normally do, once they got a player that is not necessarily part of the long term, it's no longer. I mean, it's kind of like the same deal with Joe Toney. I mean, you're in that kind of spot because you kicked the money down the curb. Toney was a guy that you want to keep around, obviously, for a while, and the Chiefs could obviously still keep him this year, but maybe they will. It's just a big number to keep him at. But with Taylor, yeah, I'm with you.
And didn't they already restructure him once before?
I believe they did. Yeah, I think he does have some.
That's why they've got a guaranteed that he was going to he was going to be able to stay on the roster an additional year because of it, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Sean, do either of you think Kingsley can make it work it out in second year? Just seen many takes writing him off already. And I do think it's wrong to write him off, but I mean, even, and Mr. M kind of, chimes in here too. The Chiefs, by all evidence, are ready to see what happens at guard with Kingsley.
If you have enough Chiefs beat writers saying that Kingsley Suamataia is potentially going to play guard, there's a reason why. So take that hint.
It's a pretty good hint. I really can't add any more to the hint, Nick. So I'm just going to let that stand right there. Would you like to combine KC Chiefs 12 and Albert K's questions into one about Andy Heck and
KC Chiefs is just more of a statement than
it is. Well, there was a bunch of question marks, but it is kind of just
more of a statement. Albert's is more of a question.
Should Andy Heck be getting more criticism? Conversely, Embry more praise. Wide receivers coach Connor Embry.
I'll just say this as bluntly as I can. I don't think it's going to matter either way. I fully expect both of them to be back on the Chiefs coaching staff. I don't think there's going to. I'm personally not anticipating changes on the Chiefs offensive coaching staff. We'll see if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But look, Andy Heck's been here since 2013, so who they are as an offensive line is who they've been, and they're going to continue to be. So if there's guys that need to be developed, they're going to get to a certain point. If there's guys that come in developed, they're going to be able to manage them. If there's free agents that have been developed elsewhere, they'll be able to manage them. If offensive linemen have bad habits, they're going to continue to have some bad habits, and that's just the way it's going to be. And that's the way it's been for over a decade now. That isn't changing. That's just what it is. And then for Connor Embry, I know a lot of people are associating the success at receiver this year with that, and I get that. As Matt and I both know, Joe Blameyer hangs around the wide receivers too. Like he's over there helping with drills and stuff whenever Matt and I get to observe during certain times of the year. So, and with the Chiefs adding Juju and Hopkins, and those guys helped out tremendously in Worthy's development. So, I don't discount the veteran leadership they had in that room that also helped develop Worthy this past year. Just like I don't discount when Travis Kelce worked to a certain extent with Rice, and Rice gave him the credit that he did. Like when we asked players in the locker room, like veterans that helped them, we're trying to find out who has kind of been a mentor for them. So, like, you can give praise to whoever the heck you want. You can speak negatively about whoever the heck you want, but at the end of the day, I don't think things are changing.
Chris says, hey, if you're spent on football, does that also apply to the players and coaches and the people in the front office for the Chiefs? Well, yes, of course. Everybody's burned out. But no, that doesn't affect 2025. That doesn't affect anything. I mean, everybody's burned out at the end of a season, Nick. Even if you won the Super Bowl, you're burned out at the end of a season.
So here's what I'm going to say, Chris. Like, at their jobs, they spend, and I'm just going to tell you this now, they spend their days there. Like, some of them get in at 6 a.m., some get in at 7 a.m. They have meetings at various points during the day. Then they have, the lips that they get in, on the days, what they're working on, what they're isolating muscle-wise, what they're doing there. So they have all that, and then they have whatever they do for on-field work, depending what type of year, what time of the year it is. Then they do some of their own personal stuff off to the side. So, like, that is their life from, let's see, for a lot of them, probably definitely April through, for the Chiefs, through February. That's their life. And I understand they're professionals and making lots of money and everything, but I get we all have different perspectives and vantage points with what we do for our professions and everything. And, we're like, oh, well, I wish I was getting paid that to do that. Look, like, no matter what industry or profession you're in, you're looking at kind of your world and what you're experiencing. So for them, that's their world. That's what they're experiencing too. So does every NFL player need a chance to reset and get the heck away? Yeah, they do. but they also need that time to let their bodies heal as well. Because I've had former NFL players that were in 2-a-days, and some of them were in 3-a-days when there wasn't rules. They would tell me, some of them would tell me they did not get off the couch for 2.5 months just to let their bodies heal. And even then, they had off-season jobs that weren't related to football that they did just to make ends meet. And they would do those too, whether it was working at a shipping yard or something like that. And they would do that. And they had to, some of them told me, like, they had to let their body rest for almost 6 months before they, because they knew training camp was going to get them into condition for the 6 weeks of the 2-a-days and all that type of stuff and all the lifting they were going to do. And some of them like to do jobs to where they did some variation of physical activity so that could essentially kind of be unofficial training for them. And I'm talking, obviously I'm talking about guys that played in the 80s and 90s and before that. And I've heard common themes from them. So the amount of time and dedication guys have to put into football, from both a mental perspective of film and all that type of stuff, and physical perspective, and doing the training in the off season just so they can maintain a certain physical peak and everything, and all that type of stuff. Like it's almost year round for them, to where they're lucky if they get maybe a month or two away from it all.
Oh yeah, no, it's a year-round job. I mean, for the players, for sure. I mean, everybody. I mean, even if you work in the front office, you're a scout. There's no downtime, because even when you're not on the road and you're not going to games and you're not traveling to campuses during the season, you're watching film. I mean, you're getting ready. There's got scouts right now who are working on next year's draft. So there's always things going on, but this organization, I mean, Andy Reid in particular, I mean, he's done a really good job with, keeping this team fresh. And, the way that he's structured the offseason, giving them the time off during phase one. It's been, I mean, I think that's a big reason why they've been able to make these deep runs. So, yes, everybody's burned out, but they do give everybody a chance to recharge the batteries a little bit. So, Nikki's been killing it tonight, just in the comments, though. I feel like this needs to be on a t-shirt once we get the merch going, Nick. I could see this being a great phrase. So it just has so many different uses.
It's very hurtful, Nikki. It's very hurtful. There's guys that have different situations. Okay. Maybe some of them are workaholics, Nikki. Okay. Maybe some of them, have a life where they work in sports 24/7, so they don't have weekends off for the past 20 years because they made that choice. Okay.
You're married to your work, Nick.
That's the truth. So,
Mr. M, I'm glad he brings this up, because I've been meaning to ask you about this guy, Nick, because I've been asked more about Alaric Jackson than anybody else, I think, over the last couple of weeks, and I'm kind of surprised by it. I mean, I get that, but he's on your list of, hey, left tackles in this league that didn't come in the traditional way. Going to be a free agent. Is a player like Alaric Jackson worth it?
From an arm length perspective, that's what's going to cause him problems, because I want to say he was at 32.
Ooh, wow, it's a T-Rex, all right.
Oh man, I forgot you and your T-Rex comparison. I forgot you're very passionate about T-Rex arms, dude.
Hey, it's I mean, that's my only trait that I have in common with NFL left tackle, Nick, is I've got long arms. So
yeah, so
I gotta brag about it.
When you do a search about it, he's projected to have 32.5-inch arms.
Yeah, so I'm gonna vote no right there on that. But
so that is I know the average in the past, back in 2021, I know the average was 34.5 for Andy Reid in terms of tackle average. So I don't know what it's at now. I don't know what it's been specifically for the past 4, 5, 6 years or whatever for Andy, but I know there's certain parameters that most people expect for the Chiefs at arm length for a tackle.
And there's a decent number of hits that do come up when you do search for Alaric Jackson. I mean, gosh, that can't be right. There's a decent number of search results that do come up for Alaric Jackson T-Rex. So I'm just saying. Mitchell, does it help the offense if Kelce retires? Old, slow, overpaid for what he has left. He looked checked out in the Super Bowl. Harsh, Mitchell, harsh. You're talking about a Hall of Famer.
I don't look. Whatever Travis Kelce decides to do, I totally get. He's earned 100%. That right, physically, mentally. He's given everything he can to this organization. He's helped them win 3 Super Bowls because of how much he gave to this organization. And as Matt talked about, like the way things went for him physically this year, you saw a pretty significant drop off. And like people keep trying to associate it with, well, he's not training as hard, or he's not doing, or he's put on too much weight, or this or that. And I'm just telling you, man, like he gave everything he had in that Super Bowl. They won over the 49ers, and you kind of saw the decline then. When you're seeing the decline, you saw the decline pretty significantly this year. And part of that's because Matt's talked about previously before the snap count that he's had and everything. So if he does come back, they got to reduce the snap counts, and whatever they do financially, I totally get. But he's earned every dollar this organization has paid to him or will pay to him because of how much he's given. And he was an underpaid tight end for a while. So the Chiefs wanted to do right by him last year and get him to the top of the tight end market and to properly compensate him for kind of honestly underpaying him a couple of other years whenever he was willing to be a team player versus being a selfish guy that could have held out and caused the Chiefs offense and a lot of problems and called their championship aspirations a lot of problems. So like, I just think you got to take all that into effect. And I don't think he's checked out. I'm just telling you, like, that's a lot that man deals with a lot more off the field than he used to. And that can be taxing as well. That isn't even related to football. So like, there's just, there's only so much people have to give. There's only so much at a certain level. And like Travis Kelce, the amount of media requests that guy's probably got, and, doing the podcast on top of that and trying to balance spending time with his significant other when he can, while also football and how much they have to dedicate into football, both from a diet perspective and from a training perspective and all that stuff combined. Like, it gets to a point where, like, I mean, he's seen what life after football is going to be like, but at the same time, I just think he's going to miss football a ton if he goes. And I hope he can make peace with whatever he personally ends up deciding to do.
Indeed. Now, everything is said 100%, especially the part about him being underpaid, and anything he makes he's earned on the football field with the Chiefs. Absolutely. Rick, do you think Hollywood will come back? I mean, we talked about this. I think there's still a decent chance. It's just got to be at the right price for the right deal. Because as you've mentioned, I mean, he's been injured. This is not a new thing. So it's just, to me, it's got to be affordable, and it's got to be incentive for games played.
Yes, I think a lot of his contract needs to be purely based off incentives for what he's going to play. So if there's another NFL team that wants to give him more than 7.5 in a year, and not have to put incentives to it, then that's where he should probably go. But if you want to say play for the Chiefs and continue to develop that with Patrick, and the Chiefs can put incentives to it, then I say go for that. So, but like, I mean, I know it sounds bad to me, I'm not going to be torn up if he goes to another team. Like, but at the same time, the Chiefs will have to address receiver with the fact that they're potentially going to lose Brown, Hopkins, and Smith-Schuster.
What are the biggest things you looking for at this year's combine? Any players you're looking to get more information on next week? I mean, I don't know about how you follow the combine, Nick, but I mean, like I said, I usually go into the combine, especially when the Chiefs have deep runs. I go into it pretty wide open. I mean, as far as, some of it is, Mike's first experience with some of the players. I mean, obviously I watched college games this year, watched playoffs. I mean, I follow Mizzou. So, and that's one of the things because, hey, local readers, I'm always interested in any of the players from the local schools and from Kansas City. So those are players that I definitely always check out, any local players who were at the combine. But, other than that, to me, if anything, the biggest thing for me is usually just what we get from, obviously, Andy Reid and Brett Veach, because it's also going to be the first time we've heard from them since the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so, the biggest things I like to get from the combine is what is the arm length of offensive tackles? The number one thing, because if it's not a certain number,
I'm not interested.
They're
yes.
not. Well, they're not going to be on. They're probably not going to be on the Chiefs board, and they're getting kicked in the guard immediately, or center. So just understand that arm length for offensive tackles is probably one of the most important things that the Chiefs are able to. Chiefs and every NFL team can get, and if it fits their parameter in terms of automatic disqualification at a position. And then the second thing is what defensive linemen do on the 3-cone drill. That shows explosiveness and the change of direction there. Same thing goes for wide receivers. And then what is a wide, I know this sounds weird, but kind of what's a wide receiver's 10-yard split and what's their 20-yard split? Because most routes are going to be 10 yards or under. Some of them are going to get to 15. And so when you get that 40-yard dash like you got with Worley last year, you got to see how quickly he could take off the top of a defense. And the fastest 40 time, for Chiefs. So, but from a running back, I'm not like, hey, what's that running back's 40 time? Because it's a straight line. Running back's rarely going to run in a straight line in an NFL game. But what's their change of direction? How fluid do they change direction? How, and then kind of look more so about that, about running back in terms of fluidity. And from an offensive lineman, when they're doing drills, I like to watch how they mirror. Even though there may not be pads and a helmet on, how quickly, what's their foot speed like? What's their quickness like whenever they're having a mirror? How quickly does it take them to react to go with the defensive lineman? And for both O-line and D-line, I like to see what their bench press is. What's their bench press? Is it over 20? If it's over 20, they got a shot. If it's 15, that's not good. And then if it's in the 30s, okay, you're playing some ball now. So like those are numbers I just like to see when everything shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, okay, arm. Pretty much the two biggest measurements anybody cares about at the combine are arm length for left tackles and right tackles, and hand size for quarterbacks. Is there anything else that matters?
Like I said, I think 3-cone drill is more.
I was just even thinking, like, from the measurement side of things, not the athletic side of things.
Sure, but then athletically, broad jump is interesting for specific positions, and then vertical leap shows explosiveness in their quads.
And height and length at corner matters a lot, but. Just always, I just always love the over. I mean, and to a degree, I mean, I don't think you can overreact enough about left tackle arm length. And I mean that seriously, even though I'm laughing. And as long as you're, as a quarterback, I think as long as your hands aren't under 9 inches, you're fine. Because Patrick Mahomes has like 9-inch hands, and he's like supposed to have small hands, and he holds on to the football just fine. So
it's a great question, Charlie. Actually,
there you go.
I really enjoyed that question.
Was a good question.
Tip of the cap to Charlie.
And just touch on Sean's comment, because I thought this was notable. Because I mean, I always thought it was notable about Kingsley's position change, Sean, because I think that's where I think that's where the Chiefs are going to move him. I think they're going to try him out of guard, and honestly, I mean, if the Chiefs lose Trey Smith and they lose Joe Toney, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Hunter Norzad and Kingsley Suamataia are starting at guard next season. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think the Chiefs have given up on Kingsley, but have they given up on him being a tackle? Probably, but we'll see what happens. Mr. M, any free agent receivers you think would be a good fit in Kansas City?
All right, let's pull that up.
Pull it up.
Simmer down, Matt. Okay.
I'm excited. I don't know why.
I know you're excited. I need you to simmer down.
I guess there's too much sugar in the Gatorade fruit punch.
Oh yeah, you're not even having the diet version. You're just
I'm not having the diet version, which I know is. I'm sure my doctor would be just as disappointed in me for having the.
I hope your doctor's not watching right now. He's gonna judge you.
He would judge me. There's no doubt about that.
I don't want that for you, Matt. I really don't. Okay, so receiver wise, the guys I'm going to watch a little bit. I'm not saying they need to go get him, but I'm curious if Tyler Boyd hits the market, how much he's dropped off from his time with the Bengals as a potential slot receiver. Josh Palmer is a guy that I'm intrigued by. I know people are going to associate T. Higgins with the Chiefs, but T. Higgins had a lot of injuries this year. And I think he's going to get top dollar from somebody else that's going to pay and really need to take a look at his physical before they sign him. Brown from the Commanders is somebody I'm going to watch when I get a chance. Tutu Atwell, I think, is kind of maybe a gadget player, but I think he would potentially be able to take like a McCole Hardman role. I have concerns with Chris Godwin and the way his foot/ankle went a different way than his leg on top of the ACL thing he had. So from an injury perspective, I think the Bucs, it wouldn't stun me if the Bucs don't let him hit the market just because they're going to know his medicals very well. Taylor Wallace from the Ravens, another guy I'm going to watch when I get some time. KJ Osborne, I know he has some issues with drops at times, but I think he'll be a guy that hits the market. Just be interested to see what he potentially wants. Then for the most part at that point, I think that's pretty much kind of...
It's pretty grim, I'm not going to lie.
What the market's going to be. And if I would still draft, personally, no matter what, I would still draft a receiver, but I'd say for the most part, those are guys that I think are going to be reasonable price-wise. And I know Darius Slayton would, I know he's been teased as a trade for the Chiefs for quite some time, but I think he's going to go find a different opportunity. I know a lot of people are wondering why I didn't include Elijah Moore, given the age he is, but Elijah Moore is also, I want to say he's about 5'9".
Yeah, I think
he doesn't get a ton of separation. Whenever I got to watch them, whenever I was watching the Browns game ahead of when the Chiefs played them in preparation for. So yeah, I mean they unofficially have him listed at 5'10", but they have him listed at 5'10", 180. But I've seen some places where he's 5'9".
Any interest in a potential Amir Smith-Marset reunion?
If all right, here's what I'm saying. If the Chiefs really thought that he was going to make an impact, they would have kept him as a part of their wide receiver group instead of trading him away for 6th or 7th round pick to the Panthers.
There you go. All right. We're going to wrap it up. One final question here. KC Chiefs 12 watched the all 22 of the Super Bowl twice. If the O-line had been able to hold their ground, the Chiefs win that game. Any reason Andy didn't make adjustments in the O-line? The game was there. I mean, they tried, Nick. It just didn't work, right?
So, I mean, we talked about on 41 as the mic this past week. I felt like what they had from their game plan with their formation alignments and what they were having Mahomes do read-wise and where he was expecting receivers to be and all that type of stuff, if they can execute that at the level that they needed to, I think the ball has to get out quick, but I still think they're able to be effective. The offensive line, the reason you need the offensive line to hold their ground and to be able to hold up longer is because what I just previously talked about was taking too long to develop, and they weren't able to, and Mahomes is going to have to create at that point and kind of create a fire drill. So I think at the heart of the matter, more than anything else, was how they were using their trips formations or 4x1 by putting the running back on that side, and how the Eagles were covering their zones and the quickness or lack of quickness they had getting to where they needed to get to spot wise, or some of the route accommodations not creating enough spacing for them to be able to attack in the time they were. So Mahomes is expecting answer 1, 2, and 3. He knows he has to read it in 2.5 seconds, but 1's not there, 2's covered, 3's not there. This isn't good. And then, and I can't take off scrambling because the way they got the sets. So, okay, I'm going to step in the pocket. Well, that's not there. So the Eagles took away all the scenarios. So I understand what people are talking about offensive line wise, but there was more, and Matt just left. Okay. So we'll see when Matt comes back here. But I can't with Matt gone right now. I cannot pull up any of the questions. Let's see. We did wide receiver. We did that. So yeah. So for KC Chief, the biggest thing I can say overall is that I totally understand. And if they had a left tackle, sure, that gets them a little bit more time and it gives them an opportunity. But overall, I just don't know that there's stuff the Chiefs coaching staff offensively is going to have to continue to look at and evaluate so that they have answers, because other opponents are going to try that from a zone coverage perspective, and the Chiefs are going to have answers for that, both at receiver and who they invest and bring in, and also on the offensive line, and also maybe in some play calling and play design about how they go about it, and if they're on the same page with Patrick Mahomes. So I think it's bigger than just you fix the left tackle and it's all done. I think there's a lot more infrastructure that they've got to build in the running back room and at wide receiver as well to get this offense back to what people want and what people expect. And Charlie, I'm going to get to your question. I won't be able to pop it up since I'm not in control of the show. Charlie asked, maybe you've already covered this, but shouldn't we have more of an emphasis on developing Kingsley? They have to bring talented but somewhat flawed players along, picking late in the draft every year. Charlie, you're right about that. But if they're going to make a move with Kingsley going to the other spot, then if they're going to make a move of him going to guard with somebody like Kingsley, then they've seen what they've wanted to from a practice perspective, from a coaching perspective. Welcome back, Matt. I've been stalling forever for you, so I'm going to continue this question with Charlie. I'm going to pop up Charlie at 8:57 there.
You're
so
the best.
Can visually see what's happening.
You are seamless when there's technical delays.
Well, worked in TV for 20 plus years, and that happens every time. It's not the first time a live shot's gone down with the other camera feed gone. But and there's been times where IFBs that you're talking to somebody in the field have gone out and you can't talk to them. So I've had to call them on my cell phone and call their cell phone and say, just plug in your IFB so I can talk to you and give you the cues. It's happened before. Got to learn to think quickly and problem solve in television, Matt. But continuing on with Charlie's thing here. Like I said, if they move Kingsley to guard, then they've seen what they think translates better for his best path of trajectory over the next 3 years, where they think he can succeed, where they think his ultimate ceiling can reach, to where what they invested in him can fully see a true return on investment that they want, if you want to talk about it from a stock market perspective or from a financial perspective in savings account. So I get what you're saying, but if they feel like putting him in there and having a center and tackle on each side of him is what is best for him and allows him to succeed, and he's better on combo blocks than he is on an island, then that's what they're potentially going to do on that front.
Nick, I feel like your t-shirt, I hope it says that you are marked safe from Matt's technical problems.
No, it's just a red flag, because I knew people are going to ask a lot of free agency questions.
Well, and it's the Nick Jacobs show officially now. So
it's not, Matt. I just you just happened to go away because of internet or something, and I just had to tap dance until you pop back up.
You're the best. You are the best. And yes, I don't think my doctor is going to be disappointed in the Eagle Green shirt, but I'm sure he would be very disappointed in the sugar count in my Gatorade. So, Nick, any parting thoughts for our Tuesday night Q&A? Any questions you wish you got? Any rant did you want to share?
No. Only thing I can tell you is anybody that's here on a regular basis, I totally get being excited about the draft, but I am not going to have answers for you until April. So every time you ask a draft question, I'll be as polite, and I'll remind you that I'm probably not going to have a lot of answers till April.
But the great thing is that when you do have answers, they're going to be quality answers, and we are going to have some fantastic draft coverage coming up down the road.
That's hoping so. But got to get to that point first. So that's a little ways off on that front. And if somebody, and the thing I want you to remember, if somebody hits free agency, there's a reason why the team did not re-sign them, and it's because they don't think they're the money that they're asking for is at the level that they wanted. And so, my rant for the night. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that on Twitter said, "Boy, the Chiefs should have kept Orlando Brown Jr." That's been the new thing that I've seen for the past couple days. Is like, "Boy, the Chiefs should have kept Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle." I get what you're saying, and I don't know if Orlando would have fared much better in the Eagles game. I honestly felt like they got, just me personally, I felt like they got more athletic ability and more overall out of Donovan Smith last year with the neck stinger or shoulder stinger that he had going on, more so than they got out of Orlando from an athletic perspective. I felt like, and I think they got it at a significantly cheaper rate that helped them be able to re-sign Chris Jones. Because if Orlando Brown's making the money, I don't think Jawan Taylor's here, and I don't know if Chris can be able to get all the money that the Chiefs were able to pay him to basically be their primary pass rusher. So I think those two correlation wise. I know people say, well, that's fine because Jawan Taylor X, Y, and Z and everything, but part of what people punish Jawan Taylor for is Chris Collinsworth on highlighting him on a game that half the tackles in the league do the same thing. So, like, I don't, Jawan gets a bad rap for that. That isn't his fault, but because the Chiefs are in national spotlight all the time that happens. But I understand what people are saying about Orlando Brown. But if you think back to the Orlando Brown situation, he wanted to be paid like Trent Williams. So the Chiefs tried to find ways to pay him like Trent Williams, overall average per year. He didn't like how little of a guarantee there was involved. Then he, at one point, didn't have an agent for quite some time. And when he started talking to agents and everything, sounded like he wasn't getting to hear what he wanted from them. And they told him the real world of what his market was versus what he was thinking his market was. And then once he found an agent that told him what he wanted to hear, they got hired. And then that agent found out that the market all along was what the experienced agents had already said.
Yes, indeed. And I'll tell you, there are still people in the Chiefs organization who I think if they could tar and feather Chris Collinsworth, they would. Because they've I mean, there's definitely a general perception that Chris Collinsworth just did a grave injustice to Jawan Taylor because, as you said, probably could have done that if any other left tackle in the league had been in that game that night. Chris Collinsworth's comments probably would apply to them too.
Yeah, right, they would have the scarlet letter right now.
Yeah,
of that.
I mean, Lane Johnson had played in that Thursday night game. Lane Johnson would be getting 20 false start penalties a year.
Maybe, and you got Mitchell Fleming here at the end with that point that I think we need to.
I almost brought this up.
Matt, you go first. Go ahead, and then I'll.
I mean, keeping with our theme for the evening, there's a reason why he's available. I mean, if the neck stinger issue were not still an issue, I think Donovan Smith might have very well been at play for this team instead of DJ Humphries. But I think it's pretty clear that Donovan either. I don't know if he hasn't officially retired. I mean, maybe he's keeping the door open to see if maybe that clears up and everything. Maybe he's hoping a year off would help. But I think if he were healthy and the neck stinger were not an issue, I think the Chiefs would have gone to him instead of DJ Humphries.
100%. I do think he was on their radar of options if it was realistic, but I mean, I think they had access to the physicals and what they had dealt with the year before, and they kind of knew where all that was. Personally,
is there sucralose in this thing, Nick?
What?
In my Gatorade?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Oh well, that does not sound like a good thing. So
it depends on what type of Gatorade you have. We'll look after the back.
So now I'm gonna have to switch from Gatorade to sugar-free Gatorade.
Matt, don't worry. You and I will talk after the show. I'll give you some pointers.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you once again for a great night, great Q&A. Thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties. Thank you for Nick Jacobs for coming in here and spending a couple of hours with us and carrying the show afloat during my technical difficulties. Good questions tonight. We didn't have too many repeat questions. This was great. Everybody had a good time. We didn't have we didn't have anybody coming in causing problems or any, disgruntled Eagle fans coming in and making inappropriate comments. So I'm going to consider this a great success, Nick.
It was a banner night, Matt. It was a banner night all around. But I do expect from now until the Chiefs make their moves, left tackle and draft questions are that's gonna be our offseason. I totally get it. And until Trey Smith signs somewhere else, I feel like we'll get a lot of Trey Smith questions, a lot of Chiefs free agent questions. And that's so for a lot of people that are in the comment section, it's going to be like Groundhog's Day for a little bit. And that's just reality until moves start being made.
That's right, woodchuck chuckers. So I had to do something. I mean, we started off with a Groundhog Day quote from Luttrell, so I had to finish with the Groundhog Day quote from myself. So
crushed it, Matt.
All right, everybody, have a great week. We are going to see you on Sunday with 41 is the mic, and our next episode of our off season, which I'm not allowed to talk about the schedule because
Well, you've already given away what we're doing.
I've already given away
the
next episode, so.
You can tell it. I mean, it's already been out there, so you can tell it if you want. I just wouldn't tell the following weeks that we planned out.
Well, should I put down what I have as the description of this episode
for the upcoming Sunday? You've already put it out publicly on 41's the mic, so you can put it out again.
Oh, I know, but I have the title as the Kiss, Marry, Kill.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that's what you
I know I can't say that on 41 is the mic, but I thought maybe I could get away with it on the live Q&A.
So
post 2 hours.
So 41 is the mic this week will be about should the Chiefs re-sign that player? Very, very a little bit different.
Keep, marry, cut. There you go.
Should the Chiefs re-sign that player? Find out our thoughts on 41 is the mic this Sunday.
At least it was the clean version.
Should the Chiefs resign that player? Find out. 41 is the mic this Sunday.
And we'll see if Nick is still my friend. So,
yeah, this is gonna be the fork in the road. Get out of here, dude.
I was gonna say, okay, there we go.
You're fine. Right, I think you've been waiting on that file for a minute. That's my bad.
All right, everybody, have a great week. Enjoy. Stay warm. Avoid the snow. Have a great week. You'll hear from us on Sunday, and then we'll be back for a Q&A next week. And hopefully, I don't drive Nick away.
Why do you always do that, dude? I've been here this long. You think I'm just gonna wander off somewhere?
I have insecurities that eventually my nonsense will cause you to leave me.
And that's our cutest promo.
It's all things Chiefs right here. 41 is the mic, a Chiefs podcast on your home of the Chiefs. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts. Also available to watch on